Following the interest rate decisions in the United States and here in South Africa, capital markets have responded positively, with stock prices rising and emerging market currencies like the South African rand, for example, firming. But what will the likely economic impact be on the ground for ordinary people and businesses? Well, to get her perspective on this and other economic policy issues, I'm joined by Professor Deborah James. She's from the London School of Economics. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. So what's your initial reaction to the interest rate cuts in both the United States and here in South Africa, and the kind of impact that you think they might have?
Hi, Nompu. Nice to be with you. So my specific take on this is quite particular. I've been part of a team with the Black Sash and the Stellenbosch University Law Clinic, and we have been looking into the way that debt repayments affect people really on the very bottom of the pile. So very different from the ones we just heard from in Rosebank. These are people in far-flung parts of the country here in South Africa. Like we've been out, for example, to train people in Pampierstad, in KwaMhlanga, in all kinds of quite remote areas. And these are people who, generally speaking, when it comes to repayment, they are borrowing from mashonisas, so-called mashonisas. And therefore, the question of whether the repo rate has been cut is going to have very little effect on them. They are people who are tending to have to pay back 50% per month on a loan, sometimes even 100% per month. So you borrow 100 rand from a mashonisa, and the next month you're supposed to be paying back 200 rand. So, you know, like I say, the kind of take that I've got on this, I'm an anthropologist, not an economist, but I've been studying debt for some time, is that although in the legal sector, if you're borrowing money in a legal kind of way, or buying a TV set or something like that, you are definitely going to be benefiting from this cut. But when it comes to these illegal lenders, I think the repo rate makes very little difference to them. They've got like a standard amount that they seem to charge people, and that's actually very injurious to the people in question.
Yes, indeed. Well, that changes the slant of our conversation then, since we're focusing on those who are sort of not in the formal net. What then do you think at a policy level needs to be done in terms of improved income distribution and also, you know, stopping the scourge of people who are on lower incomes or very limited incomes having to go out to mashonisa? What do you think can be done at a government level, do you think?
So this is something we have considered quite carefully with my fellow team members in the Black Sash and the Stellenbosch University Law Clinic. And although we've tried pressing for some kind of legal change, we've run up against a problem, which is that the people affected, especially by this, are social grant recipients. And they have the problem, which is that when they start borrowing from a mashonisa, the mashonisa usually confiscates their ATM card and their ID card. And so, in a sense, the money really just rests very briefly in the bank account of the person who's borrowed the money and then flies out to the account of the mashonisa who's withdrawing the repayment at the local ATM. And so, although we tried to press for some kind of protection of people like this, and the DSD does believe in this kind of protection, the idea was that if you get a child support grant, it should not be used as security for a loan of this kind. We also found then that the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition tends to favor the notion of free market trading like you have in the Constitution, which says once the money's in your hands, you should be able to use it for whatever you want, and that would include using it as security for a loan from a loan shark. So we ended up feeling as though at government level, there's not going to be much achieved until these different departments start to collaborate with each other, and that would include DTIC, DSD, and possibly the Department of Education as well. Even the Home Office is concerned because people's ID books are getting routinely taken away from them. But even more importantly, we have decided that maybe at the ground level, people need more education, and that's what we've been trying to provide. We've been going out, giving people training about their rights, and even those are mostly legal rights, but we found that the knowledge of those rights sort of filters through from the legal side and starts to empower local debt advisors, or what you might call advice officers. And there's a range of these right around the country. And we've actually come across examples of people who right down at the grassroots level have been managing to get mashonisas together with their clients and basically broker a deal so that the person does not have to pay back the full amount with this 50% interest, but maybe pays back the full amount with a much smaller amount of interest, or staggers the repayment over a period of time. So in some respects, we found that the solution for the time being seems to lie at this intermediary level, not necessarily at the level of all these government departments, but we're still holding out a hope that maybe some of these departments will start to collaborate more sort of effectively with each other to try and bring an end to this scourge, basically.
Yeah. Professor, I'm a little bit confused, because even if these departments work together, we're talking about criminal acts. And at the end of the day, if somebody is going to go to Mashonisa, it's underground. It's something that's not seen. How can they get involved in that? Because this is something where people are kind of volunteering themselves to be serviced by Mashonisa. So by collaborating, how can they actually intervene? And surely what you're suggesting about giving people advice and instruction and direction about being more empowered financially is going to be much more effective than these departments collaborating for something that they can't actually see until it's too late.
Yes, that's pretty much the resolution that we've also arrived at. Once you're dealing with something that is happening below the level of the law, there's really very little that you can actually do on a formal, official level. It's just one of the strange ironies of life that by giving grants regularly to so many people around the country, and South Africa's got one of the most advanced social grant systems in the developing world, but by doing that, you've also made it possible for those grants to ultimately end up in the hands of these loan sharks, which is terrible. Now, although you're right in saying that this is an illegal act, these loan sharks really do sort of differ quite widely. So you've got the really big scale ones who run huge operations and are, frankly, real criminals. But then you've also got your neighborhood lenders. Sometimes these are even members of stokvels. Some of these savings clubs actually have a specification that they must also lend out money at interest. And so some of the people that we're talking about are actually borrowing from stokvels or from the auntie on the corner. These people are not quite so kind of like demonic as the ones that you normally think of when you think of a loan shark. So one's got to recognize that there's a very wide range. And yes, for the time being, we feel as though empowering people at the local level, and especially giving more proceeds and more resources to these what you might call barefoot debt advisors or like local advice officers is really the way to go.
Indeed. Professor, thank you so much for your time and your insights there. Professor Deborah James, she's from the London School of Economics and has also worked closely with Black Sash.